Yeah. Everybody a minute. Welcome, everyone. It's so good to see all of our little humans here. We're very, very excited for the surprise that is to come in shortly. We will, just so everybody knows, we will move this presentation to earlier in the meeting so that you guys can all take your children home and you don't have to sit through a very exciting board meeting, because I know that's exactly what you want your preschoolers to be doing. But I'm excited to have you here, and I'm excited to see the presentation. We will call the meeting to order. Pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act, public notice of this meeting has been given by the board secretary in the following manner: posting written notice on the official bulletin board at Voorhees Township Public Schools Administrative Building on August 17th, 2023, sending written notice to the Courier Post on August 17th, 2023, filing written notice with the clerk of Voorhees Township on August 17th, 2023, and posting on the Voorhees Township website on August 17th, 2023. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have to roll call? Yes. Board Secretary, will you call the roll?
Mr. Bryce? Ms. Cadover?
Here.
Mr. Rosen?
Here.
Mr. Rosner?
Here.
Mrs. Rudder?
Here.
Mrs. Stewart?
Here.
Mrs. Stubler?
Here.
Ms. Verdi?
Here.
Mrs. Watson?
Here. Yep.
Good evening, everyone. I am so excited that tonight you are going to get a little sample of our preschool students. We talk about preschool at quite a few of our board meetings. So tonight we wanted to show you the work that our amazing staff and students are doing, along with our supportive parents. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Julie Lyons, who is our Director of Early Childhood, and she will present our preschool students. Ms. Lyons.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Julie Lyons, the Director of Early Childhood and K-5 Literacy. First, I'd like to thank the board for graciously allowing our preschool students to showcase a snapshot of their learning. A special shout out to our families for supporting the preschool program and bringing your little ones here tonight. I'd also like to express gratitude to our fantastic coaches, Ms. Chimento, who's our preschool instructional coach, and Ms. Ambrositis, our preschool intervention and referral specialist. Their unwavering commitment and support to our teachers, students, and families is unparalleled. It's also important to thank Dr. Allegria, our Director of Special Services, and Ms. Williams, who is our Community Parent Involvement Specialist and Social Worker, for their input, support, and collaboration from the Special Education Department, as well as a heartfelt thank you to our preschool principal, Ms. Morris, and provider director, Ms. Corey, and our amazing teachers, Ms. Colon and Ms. Ballack, who are out there in the hall with the little ones, and our wonderful instructional associates, Ms. Hodzig, Ms. Anderson, Ms. Pearson, Ms. Eileen, and Ms. Scaffini, for their dedication and collaborative efforts that have made this presentation possible. And of course, a huge thank you to our preschool stars that you can hear right now and you're going to see very shortly, who are here tonight to share their newfound knowledge with all of us. The district's preschool program, just to give you a little bit of background, operates across multiple locations throughout the district, from Crescent Elementary School to our partnering private provider sites. Tonight, we have students visiting from our 4-year-old class at one of our private provider locations, Fervent Beginnings, and our mixed age 3- and 4-year-old class from Crescent Elementary School. This is just a small representation of our rapidly growing program, and considering that this is our first full school year since the district received preschool expansion funding, I'd like to thank everyone involved with the preschool program, since our expansion would not be possible without your continued support. Tonight's showcase centers around the children's exploration during their clothing study, which is part of the creative curriculum. Throughout this study, students engaged in firsthand experiences that allowed them to practice gross and fine motor skills as they zipped, snapped, and buttoned various articles of clothing. They also explored clothing and shoe sizes, compared the attributes of clothing based on texture and color, and you can see some of that on the displays on the wall. And they even learned about the process involved in designing, making, and buying clothes and how to properly care for them. Finally, they learned more about the different purposes of clothing, from clothing that we wear based on the weather, to special occasion clothing, clothing that reflects a person's culture, and the clothes that people wear for work. The evidence that they're learning is beautifully displayed on the wall. And as you can see, academic areas like math and literacy are woven into everything they do throughout the school day. For example, teachers are incorporating math skills in the tally charts that you can see, where they're practicing grouping by fives, and then they can count how many. The teacher is constantly modeling literacy skills as well, like reading and writing, which children are then encouraged to engage in as part of their play. Tonight, the preschoolers are going to perform alphabet songs that they're eager to share as they explore various professions, and you will see from their clothing, their professions, while addressing sound and letter correspondence simultaneously. Parents, as we mentioned, when your children finish their presentation, they are going to go back out in the hallway and they're going to exit the room through those doors. They'll be coming in through these doors, exiting through those doors, and you can then meet your children out in the hallway. And there's a little token of thanks for the students. So when they're finished performing, we're going to ask the teachers to hold them. And so now, without further delay, I'm thrilled to present our preschool students. We can't wait to see what they've been learning. Thank you.
We go down.
They're gonna face this way.
Because they're going to face that way.
Patrol! Hi kids! What's your favourite animal? A. Alligator. A.
B. Butterfly. B. C. Cow. C.
D. Dog. Ruff. D.
So, her latest news was the firefighter. Her uncle fought her as firefighter and after 10 fire stations, was the one that has put in fire. She also insists on this. Which I say,
while we're waiting, we can do our end part now, so we can sing our alphabet song first, and then we can do this. So we'll start that. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y. Now I know my ABC. Next time, won't you sing with me?
Pink, pink, what color am I wearing? Blue, green, orange, purple, yellow, red, pink.
Hi kids! What do you want to be when you grow up?
A, astronaut. A,
B. Ballerina. B.
C, conductor. C,
D. Doctor. D. E. Engineer. E.
F, firefighter. F,
G. Gardener. G. H. Hairdresser. H. I. E. Illustrator. I.
J, jockey. J,
K. Karate instructor. K. L. Librarian. L. M. Musician. M.
N, nurse. N, O, optometrist. O,
P. Pilot. P. Q. Queen. Q.
R, race car driver. R,
S. Scientist. S. T. Teacher. T.
U, umpire. U,
V. Vet. V.
W, waiter. W, X, X-ray technician. X,
President, Vice President will give them their gifts.
They're super cute. It doesn't really get any better than that. Thank you so much to all of the kids and the parents for joining our board meeting. They did exceptional. You are all free to leave if you so choose. We're going to give you some time to do that. Can Clark make it a little cooler? I'm trying to get his attention.
Oh, they're not here for us.
Are you hot?
So sad.
I'm dying. It's all right. I'll power through.
You can turn her down.
Yeah, I was going to try and get his attention, but I...
Hey, that's what it's supposed to be. That's how it's supposed to be. College starts in preset.
Yeah, well, she's ready.
Yeah.
Girl was
After
focused.
2
She was
pre-K
singing the
teachers
whole thing.
today, they are amazing. They have to have the pre-K teachers are amazing.
I agree. I don't even understand.
Thank you. That was a lot of parents. I know the whole room was full.
Some of those kids are 3, so it's probably bedtime.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I can
seriously.
walk over there. Let me just walk over there and try to do something.
If you know how that works.
I'll try. While they're
Sorry, I'm on fire.
Oh yeah, it is really hot.
He said Clark just gave the thumbs up. Yeah.
I don't, there's like 2 things.
Although he may have been giving me a thumbs up for that. Okay, we can get back to the meeting. There is no executive session tonight. Can I get a motion to approve the board minutes of the February 28th, 2024 regular meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Voting is open. I'm sorry, you know what? I did the wrong thing. I'm really sorry.
It's okay.
I have to stop it. I'm sorry. This was executive session. I put the wrong thing.
Oh, no problem.
So let me start over.
Thanks, Clark.
Was that
Let's
easy?
try this again. Sorry, the motion, voting is open. The motion unanimously passes. There's one abstention by Mr. Rosen and 7 yeses.
Thanks. President's comments, very brief. I had the honor and pleasure of attending the VMS show 13, the musical. It was outstanding. I cannot believe, actually I can believe because our district's amazing. So I can believe how incredibly talented those students are. I was blown away every single time someone got up and said something, someone got up and sang something. I know that Miss Kedover will be shy, but her daughter had a leading role in the play and she was exceptional. Caitlin can't be mad at me, but she can be mad at Julie. I was just ridiculously impressed. And they made the entire district incredibly proud. So thank you to everyone. I know it took a monumental effort for everyone to put that show on. So thank you to everyone that contributed and made it a huge success. Fire drills and safety drills, as shown on the attachment. Harassment, intimidation, and bullying report is also on the attachment, as well as suspensions and bus evacuation drills. We have one Oprah request that we received that has been closed out. And I am going to move to the board secretary report.
Right, thank you. I think I will move over to the podium so that way I can be able to address the board.
Sounds good, thanks.
Okay, good evening, everyone. All the board members have a binder, a budget binder, that contains the information that I will be going over in a more highlighted fashion. On Wednesday, March 6th, we had a finance committee meeting where the finance committee received the budget binder, and then budget binders were delivered to the rest of the board members the next day. And the binders include these categories: state aid comparison and notifications, advertised revenue, detailed appropriations, budget account analysis and comparison by totals, budget account analysis by category, budget fact sheet, technology funding, special education funding, construction projects, and grants. So at this point, I will go over the highlights of those items. Under finance, there's agenda item 19.10, and that's the budget. So that's what you see up on the screen right now. So that is the budget motion. And it totals the entire budget that is being submitted to the county. So the process is tonight we present to the board votes to submit the tentative budget to the county. The county reviews it. They give us feedback if they have questions about anything. And then it will go to a public hearing on May 1st and then voted on the final budget. So contained in this motion is the general fund budget, which is $67,605,748 with a tax levy of $52,445,979. Special revenue, that's our grant funding. So that's not tied to any tax levy. It's purely grants and state aid and so forth. The biggest part of that is our preschool program, but there's also IDA and title funds in there, and any other kind of local grant that we might get goes in there. So it's really ins and outs. The total of the budget combined is $76,949,324. We don't have any debt service because we don't have any debt. The other items that have to be approved along with this budget are some of the funding sources. So the one source is local tax levy. And then there's the capital reserve withdrawal. That's $4,020,000. And that funds our capital projects. Underneath that, you see the statement of purpose. So the state requires us to detail what that $4 million will be used for. So the projects listed there read as follows: to maintain the facilities such as replacing windows, interior doors, repaving a parking lot, refurbishing restrooms, replacing carpet with hard surface flooring, renovating a vestibule, upgrading HVAC control systems, replacing HVAC units, conversion of municipal sewer, and construction related to the preschool expansion. The aggregate is $4,020,000. The maintenance reserve that we're using towards the budget is $1,744,962. Emergency reserve, you can only use that for security items or increases in healthcare. So we're using the remainder of that, which is $186,901. And another item that has to be approved every year is travel regulations. And really, the state refers to professional development that's off-site as travel. So that encompasses the fee to go to the seminar or convention and the travel. And that is for employee travel versus board travel. Board travel is in a different account and doesn't have to be reported in the same manner as this. So as I was saying, the budget itself, and we'll just focus on the general fund because that is really the one where there is different revenue sources other than grant money. So the 67,605,000, the pie chart kind of shows the breakdown of it. And so what you can see is the local tax levy is the largest part. That it represents 68% of the revenue side of the budget. Then there's also, let me just back a minute. The 15.9% is our state aid piece, which is about $5 million. The federal is 2.1, which is small, and 13.8 is the other sources. So the other revenue resources are made up of as follows. I have a different chart that I will follow from dollar amounts. So I mentioned the tax levy, the capital reserve, which we talked about, 4 million, maintenance reserve, emergency reserve, state aid, other revenue, and fund balance. So other revenue is made up of estimates. So in the past, what we would do is just estimate really low, because if you don't meet it, it's good. And if you surpass it, it becomes surplus. And the surplus funds can be used to replenish your reserves. So what we decided to do, and again, this was a tough budget year, and I'll address that in a minute. In order to help balance the budget on either side, we said, let's take a closer look at our revenue. We know that we will get more than we were putting in there before. So we'll up it a little bit in order to be not less conservative, but just more realistic, I guess. So we, instead of budgeting 80,000 for interest, we budgeted 500,000 for interest. We know that we'll make more than that. Also, we get extraordinary aid every year, and that's tied to our special education costs that are over a certain dollar amount. In the past, we've gotten 1.4 million. We said, let's budget 1 million. So, and then there's another smaller piece called semi, and we usually, that's tied to Medicaid reimbursement, and we usually don't budget for that. We budgeted, we do budget for that all the time. That's 79,000. So that's the other revenue piece. The fund balance piece is made up of 3 figures of $2.5 million. Every year when the auditor comes in and does their work, they tell us how much surplus must be applied to the next year. That amount was 1.3 million as of June 30th. And on top of that, when we work in the state software, it calculates another amount based on where we are this year. And it says, you can probably come up with another 292,000 out of this year's money that you're not spending yet and put that towards that. We said, usually we know we generate more than that we like to use to replenish our reserves. We're going to go a little deeper this year, and some of that had to do with the cut in state aid. So we come up with another 800,000 out of this year that we're applying to next year. So in total, that's how you balance the revenue side of the 67,605,748. We have in this budget, when we started out, whenever you start the budget process, people submit all the expense side of it, and then we find out what our healthcare is going up, which is 10%. We find out the cost of living that they tell us contracts can go up, which is 5.86 for like transportation and so forth. And we put in all the, I guess, wish list, you could say. When we looked at this year's budget, and then on the revenue side, we just start out with local tax levy at 2%, because that's how much you're allowed to go up by, and that's how much we do every year. We look at flat state aid and the local tax levy. Well, when we looked at those 2 pieces, we were short by $5 million. We're like, well, this is not going to work. So we had to look at the expense side, say, what can we scale back on the expense side? What can we maybe not do, put off till another year, maybe do it now this year before this year ends. So we went through that and decided what to do there, and then reduce things. Once you know that you've reduced it as far as you feel comfortable reducing it, you look at the revenue side and you say, all right, well, I know all my capital projects are funded by capital reserve, so that's pretty much a wash. How much can I take out of maintenance reserve? Can emergency reserve do something for me? Which in this case it did, because our healthcare went up 10% and not the 4% that the state health was going up. So you just work both sides until you come to a balance. So I would say this year, basically how we kind of filled that, we were caught $1 million. How we filled that was a combination of using more reserve money and some fund balance. All right, so I will jump around a little bit here. So you saw the revenue pieces right there. The next slide shows the appropriation side. So the appropriation side stays pretty consistent every year, but the things do go up. So as a percentage of the total cost, regular and special education instruction is 64%. 18% is employee benefits, 6% capital outlay, 7.9% operations and maintenance, and 3.4% insurance. Sometimes people like to talk about administration and if that's high or not. We're below the dollar amount that's for the southern part of the state. So we're well below that. That's maybe $2,500 per pupil. We're about $1,700 per pupil. So there's a lot of criteria that the budget software looks at and that the county looks at as we're doing the budget. But again, as we balance this budget, it was more difficult than before because we did have to reduce it by the $5 million. And then when the state aid was released on February 29th, you can go to the next slide, Bruce. Thank you. The next slide shows our state aid comparison. So in fiscal year 23-24, our total state aid was $6,081,445, and it was reduced this year by $1,052,957 to get state aid of $5,028,488. And again, it's a surprise when it comes in because you always kind of count on flat aid. So we did not expect the $1 million. So we had already cut a lot out of the budget and balanced it for the most part. And then we had to take another look and say, okay, now we have another $1 million to address. So we did. And at the time, there's other districts around here too that were hit just as hard percentage-wise. So I think like some of them maybe were hit 5 million, but that's 16% of their budget, where this is 17% of our budget. So, I'm sorry, not a budget, 17% reduction. It's a 17% reduction where some other people's numbers seem high, but as a percentage of their total aid, it's comparable. All right, so you can go to the next slide. So people were asking, why did this happen? Why did your aid go down? So we made some charts to show why that is. So this chart here, there's 9 pages to the state aid numbers. And like I said, they're always released on the 2 days after the governor's address. And everybody gets them at the same time. And then you frantically analyze them to find out what happened. So the state has a calculation called a district adequacy budget. And that's based on your enrollment that's weighted and averaged and multiplied by dollar amounts per type of category. So like the regular number per student is 13,000 something. Special ed is 21,000 something. So they come up with what is your district adequacy budget based on this formula. So you can see that our district adequacy budget has increased over the last 4 years. It jumped up in 22-23 because that's when we instituted full day kindergarten. So before that, our kindergarten enrollment was calculated at a weight of 50%. Then once we went full day, it was 100%. So right there, our enrollment jumped. And from that point, it kept going up. Now the red line is the local fair share. The other part of the calculation or the formula for equalization aid, they look at your property values and the income that's in your township. So when you do your state tax return, there's always a 4-digit code that you put on there for the township that you live in. That gets gathered and that's tied to our township here. So they compare those two numbers and run a calculation on that too. There's different factors that are applied to it and they can change them each year if they choose to. But as those numbers go up, your fair share goes up. So in our situation, as you can see, the local fair share has gone up significantly, and that's tied to an increase in ratables, or they call it equalized valuation, and an increase in the income in this township. Now, the income is based on 2021, and the ratables are based on 2023, but again, that's just how the formula works. So you can see on this chart that the local fair share was above the adequacy budget in 21-22, and then the adequacy budget surpassed it, and then for 2 years, and now the local fair share is above it again. And what that means is either you're eligible for equalization aid or you're not. So when our adequacy budget is below the local fair share, then we're eligible for equalization aid. When it's not, we're not. So in this particular year, 2024, the local fair share, which means how much taxes do they think we can contribute to the adequacy budget, is higher. So we don't get any equalization aid. At the bottom, this yellow line shows equalization aid. And as you can see, it goes up, it goes down. So there were 2 years that we got it and we didn't get it. It's very complicated, but anyway, that's how the formula works. Then the next page shows that same adequacy budget, and it shows the reduction in state aid. So you can see that we were cut in state aid in 21-22, which was about 300,000. And then it went up a little bit, like we got about $1 million extra in 22-23. We got 70,000 extra in the next year, and now we lost $1 million. And it's all tied to this equalization aid calculation. Okay, the next page is what's called Chapter 67 S2. That's the law that came about in 2018 to try to level out the state aid funding. For a while before that, state aid was flat. So there were districts that had increased enrollment that were getting flat aid and didn't cover their students. And there were districts who had decreasing enrollment and they got more aid than the calculation would come out to be. So it started out S2, I think in the Senate, became law 67. And this formula would be run, the equalization aid, and this few other calculations to determine whether you would get additional aid to smooth it out or not. So this chart shows uncapped aid. Uncapped aid is when they run the state aid formula based on your criteria with no cuts, no adjustments at all. And then they say, what was your pre-budget aid the year before? And do you get a reduction or not? And they phase that in over 7 years. So in the beginning stages, we were getting cuts in aid and we knew we were getting them and we accounted for them. And at the peak, it was $300,000, which I believe that was in 21-22. And usually to close that hole, we would use maintenance reserve. But 300,000 wasn't as hard to close as $1 million. All right, so then again, when full day kindergarten came in, that changed the whole calculation for us because now our kindergarten kids, which might be close to 300 kids, were now weighted at 100%, not 50%. So that boosted everything up. And we're like, yay, this is how it's going to be going forward. And then it kind of leveled off and it was fine last year until the property values went up and the income went up, and then it changed it again. So as you can see, we were cut in 21-22, we're cut in 24-25, but the other 2 years, we got a little bit of an increase in aid. I know this all sounds kind of complicated, and it is. So it's hard to predict. A lot of people are very upset. There's a lot of towns, a lot of school districts that are very upset with the cuts. And we've met on a few different occasions with them. We had a Zoom call with a bunch of the local districts just talking about it. Like, why did yours, what factor caused yours to go, your budget to be cut? And it's a little bit different in each situation. Like in our situation, we are pretty much paying our fair share. Like the calculation that they have has us paying about where we're paying, like close to that $52 million. We're actually a little bit under, but close enough. There's other districts, when they run it, their fair share is so much higher than what their tax rate is right now that they can't even get to it. Like it would be well over 2%. And that they can't, it's impossible for them to get to it. So sometimes it doesn't really work out. But again, I think when the formula is derived, not all scenarios can be predicted. So in our situation, the formula was run, and that's just how it worked out because of the increase in the income and the property values. Again, we want to find out as much as we can and talk to people as much as we can. Again, we had a local meeting with local BAs and superintendents, and then there was a New Jersey ASBO meeting, and people are talking to the state on our behalf. But I know one of the bills I read about was actually talking about lifting the 2%. And that's not something that we're interested in here. Like we don't really have that issue where some towns need to do that because they're not at their fair share level. So that's really not our scenario. Our scenario just worked out that there was a blip this year in the property values and income, and the adequacy budget is less, so that's just how the formula came out. The next slide is the tax rate. So what we did is, this is called a budget fact sheet. We present this each year. We did it a little bit differently this year. We decided it would be more meaningful if we backed out the capital reserve. So we start out with our general fund budget, which ties out to the motion that we're voting on. And if you look at last year, it looks a lot higher. But the reason why it's a lot higher is because of capital projects that we put in there. So if we take out the capital reserve money, which ties to the projects, then you get a more comparable number. So last year's general fund without capital reserve was $61,428,072. This year's $63,585,748. So it's an increase of a little over $2 million, which is an increase of 3.51%. So considering all the increases that we face, whether they're contractual or healthcare or insurance, other insurance being higher than that, it is a good number, I believe, to come out at 3.51% of an increase. The tax levy, we don't go above the 2%. We would be able to because there's something called banked cap. And banked cap is another formula in the state aid software that says if your healthcare is over X amount percentage, you can get more taxes. If something else, like there's different reasons you can go above the 2%. We do have banked cap that can be used, but banked cap does not mean it's money sitting there for us. It's a capacity, which means we could raise the tax levy higher than 2%. We don't want to do that. So we stay with the 2% as we have every year. But another thing that happens is as the ratables go up, that 2% has a different effective rate on the taxpayer because it gets spread out amongst a higher ratable number. So at the bottom of the chart, it shows that in 24-25, the 2% increase in our tax levy equates to 1.84% on the taxpayer. And what that means is on the average house is assessed at $263,084. The increase would be $76.69 a year or $6.39 a month. But you'll see the comparison at the bottom, like even though it's been 2% increase every year on our number, it varies based on the ratables at the bottom. Okay, so the one thing I wanted to touch on that is not part of the whole general fund budget is preschool. And that was also on the motion that's included in the special revenue number. Our preschool is funded, the majority of the preschool is funded by state aid. And how that is generated is we submit an enrollment number projection, and they give you a certain dollar amount per student. And there's calculations against that too, but it all comes out where we're projecting a higher number next year because we're planning on having a building. So this year, our the year that we're in, we got state aid of 4.8 million, next year at 6.3 million. The total budget for preschool is 7.8 million because we also have to transfer money over for the inclusion students because the preschool education aid covers the regular ed students and the regular budget, general fund budget covers the inclusion students. So we transfer over $1 million for that. So there is a comparison, and the reason why the state aid went up there is because of the enrollment number, and it can only be used for preschool. So that's why we didn't include that in the other analysis. Some other questions that had come up is with our anticipated surplus that we said we're using 800,000 of it, and the 200, it's roughly $1 million. We're using about $1 million of this year's anticipated surplus. And what that means for us is that we won't be able to have that money to put into reserves. So each year we want to replenish reserves and we try our best to do that. However, also we've had a lot of projects in the last so many years. And we've done a lot of amazing things with, building a 10 classroom addition came from reserve money. That was a $5 million job. We have pulled out money for the preschool building that we were going to purchase. Part of the numbers that I backed out, last year we withdrew $11 million from capital reserve. This year, $1 million. So it's $12 million, and we're getting a $6 million grant for the rest of it. So even though we won't be able to put as much into capital reserve, we should have less projects, but we do want to be conservative with everything and continue to replenish capital reserve as we have the money. In addition, let me just think. We also cut off spending at a certain point in time, and we usually do that around now. So from now to the end of the year, we watch everything very closely to decide, do we need this? Do we not need this? Can this be put off till later? But we also want to look at common practices that we've done and over time decide whether we should continue with them or not. So it's really like it'll happen over so many years, but we want to be very careful with spending. Question was asked about miscellaneous revenue, and that's what I was talking about. Like we used to budget 80,000 for interest. We decided to up it to 500,000. I believe last year we made 800,000. And you'll see on this agenda that we have some other ideas for investing. We're going to put some money in New Jersey ARM, which has about 5% interest return, where our normal account is 2.3. Also at TD Bank, they have municipal CDs, and we're going to invest in them too. So that'll bring in more interest, which hopefully we can then put into reserves. Let's see what else we have here. I had addressed also that we have met as a group of superintendents and BAs with people that are very familiar with the calculation, just so all of us can say, here's how it impacted our district. So that way everybody can understand what exactly caused this to happen. And it is a little bit different for each person, each school district. But again, we are getting the word out there just so people can understand the calculation, because this is the last year of that calculation. S2, chapter 67 was over a 7-year period to level everybody out based on their enrollment. And this is the last year. So I guess next year, if nothing changes, they'll just run the formula, and we would hope that we're where we are now, because there is no more equalization aid. That's over. And we got 0 of it this year. So if they're comparing one year to the other, our enrollment should not be going down. So unless our income and property values skyrocket again, I mean, that would be the only difference. But that took away our equalization aid. So if equalization aid goes away, then that won't be part of the calculation. So it's really hard to fully predict, but you know, things are changing because that S2 is ending. Let's see if I have anything else to go over. Does anybody have any, does the board have any questions for me?
I have a question. Oh, sorry. What is the chances that the state will reconsider and come back and say, okay, we'll give you more money? So I've seen other districts ask people to reach out to their local representatives and things like that to kind of advocate for them.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's always that possibility. I know in years ago, there was a situation when I was in my other district where state aid was cut in July, like we were already in the next year, and they cut it. And then they came up with emergency aid. So you would have to apply for the emergency aid, and you would have to say why you needed it to justify why you would need it, and then you would get it. And it was maybe like a 1-year fix. I think a lot of people have been vocal, and we've been vocal also, that I don't know if they'll consider it, but I've seen it done before. You know, I have seen it happen before. Now, if we applied for emergency aid, would we be qualified for it? I'm not sure. It depends on what the criteria is. We always try for everything, you know, so we would give it our best effort. But I haven't heard about that. I've only heard about laws being proposed to raise the 2%. And again, that's not what we want to do. We'd rather, you know what, this equalization aid cut this year, because it was the last year, it was at 100%. Years before were eased in like 76, 35, whatever. If they would have taken a little, like maybe 1 more year, you know, like take it at 70%, it wouldn't have been as hard. I don't know if they're going to change it. I don't know.
Sorry. So will people, like, where the students feel the difference, or will families feel the difference of this $1 million cut, or no one will?
I would say no.
Okay.
I would say no. We did not cut any programs. We didn't cut any staff. We just tried to just rearrange some things. Like on this agenda right now, we're buying some iPads this year, financing them over a number of years to, you know, soften the blow. And that way it's in this year's money, and we were getting them in sooner so we can get them all prepped and ready to go. We're starting some things ahead of time because we know we have a little bit right now. So we're just trying to plan. It's a cash flow planning thing. But no, nobody should really notice anything or panic. It's good. We were able to close it. However, I think going forward, we just have to be very conscious of this every time we make a big purchase or start something new. That's all. We just have to be very conscious that you know, we don't know what state aid is going to be, you know, so we have to be careful. And prices go up. The thing that started to hurt last year is the CPI. Like they assign you a CPI. It used to be like 1.7, 1.9, which one of the biggest areas that applies to is transportation. So every year we can renew transportation routes. So if we like the routes that we have, we'll send a letter. I think that's on the agenda tonight too. We send letters to the contractors and we say, here are the routes we'd like to renew. Are you willing to renew? And they can renew up to the CPI. And it used to be 1.7, 1.9. Now, during the whole COVID time period, you know how difficult it got to get drivers, the rates went up, the fuel went up. So the state has adjusted the CPI. It was 5.86 last year, 5.81 this year. So a lot of our routes were not renewed when it got up because people are like, I'm not renewing for the one. Well, I'm sorry. Let me back up. They did renew. They did before. They didn't renew when it was like 1.9 because they're like, this is not working anymore. We had to go out to bid. So once we did go out to bid and it was going up to 5.86, they said, yeah, we'll renew. This is fine with us. So no matter what, the ones that we're renewing are going up 5.81%. Right? We can't help it because we could choose to go out to bid, but it could be more, like you don't know. You know, so if they're willing to renew at the 5.81 and we like the routes that we have, we're staying with that. I don't know where that's going next year. So there's that. Healthcare, our healthcare, we're not with state health benefits. Last year, state health benefits went up 15%. Ours went up 8%. That was great. This year, state health benefits went up, I think, 4 or 6%. We went up 10%. Like, you just don't know. So there's what we did there too is because we're part of a shift, the school's health insurance fund, there's pooled money based on experience. There was money available for that, and we're voting to bring that back in. It's our money anyway, so we're bringing it back in to offset some of the premiums. Same thing with our joint insurance fund. There's surplus, we're bringing that back. So whenever there's money of ours out there, we're bringing it back to help offset. We didn't do that before. We would just let it accumulate until we needed it. So I think we did it with one of them last year. So you just try to find other ways to make it work. And every year is a new year. And you just say, do we really need this? Do we not need this? And you just try to be careful with everything.
What about building costs for the new building? I mean, you anticipated, obviously, things keep getting more expensive. Right. CPI keeps every time we hear the reports. Yes. Right.
Well, hopefully that's okay. Our architect had given the projection. The architect, when we applied for that $6 million grant, the projection, he put in like $15 million. And so we get their percentage of it. I mean, hopefully it's still the same. Hopefully it doesn't keep getting pushed back longer and longer, that it would go up more. I think our architect still feels that we're in the same ballpark. I think there's always a little contingency built in. Like when they spell that out, it's not hidden. Like they put some kind of contingency amount because you don't know where the prices are going. But yeah, we'd like to get started on that. And our $6 million is fully approved. I mean, it is fully approved. And I think we have the acceptance of funds on there too. Actually, I wrote down a few different motions. That's on my notes here. There's 3 motions that I wanted to talk about. Oh, the budget is the 19.10. The preschool education aid budget is 19.11. And then the $6 million acceptance of funds is 19.14. So all these are tied in with this year's budget. Any other questions?
I don't have a question, but I did want to say thank you so much because I feel so comfortable because you are the one that's taking care of us in this situation. Thank you. And I just want to thank you and Dr. Hackett for the communication that went out to the parents in the district, because I have seen communication that has gone out to parents in other districts that are losing money, and it has a very sky is falling tone to it. And we did not get that from you. So I just want to say thank you so much for everything.
Thank you. And I also have to thank my staff, who is amazing. So Danielle Curie, she did the bulk of all this budget part of it. I just kind of come in. I do the revenue side. She does the appropriation side. We come together and we clean it up together. And then we go and tell Dr. Hackett the bad news and say, help us. Yeah. So with the cabinet, and Trisha Milady, she's been great. She helps us put all this together. My other staff helps. I mean, it's a team. This is definitely a teamwork project. I just get to present it. That's all. So any other questions? All right, thank you. I think I'll just finish my little part up here. The next thing I have on my section is something really great, and we've gotten this, I think, 3 times. The ACME has joined with, it's called Gen Youth. During COVID, we applied for some grants, and we got money back it was from Gen Youth at the time. And we got money at that point where we could buy things to help with our food distribution. And back then we got these huge zipper bags. They were insulated zipper bags. We put all the meals in them. They went out to all the schools. So that was really great. But then, we're on their list. So thank goodness it comes up all the time. And so Gen Youth is tied in with the ACME. And so when people shop at the ACME, I guess they say, do you want to contribute towards, this project called ACME Markets Foundation's Nourishing Neighbors. So people do. And then last year they had their grand reopening and they invited us there. Clark Mathis and I went to it. They handed us a big check. We got $2,000 that equated to gift cards. And we give them to the schools. Like we give them to each of the schools, and the schools help families in need. So this year they sent a letter again to Dr. Hackett and said, we've collected money for you again. And it says, we are thrilled to announce that Voorhees School District is slated to receive $3,350 in 25 ACME gift cards through Gift Card Bank on behalf of ACME Markets Foundation's Nourishing Neighbors program and Gen Youth. Gift cards may be distributed to schools within your district. So that's what we do. So we split them up amongst the schools. And I don't recall whether the nurse holds on to them or the social worker, somebody, the guidance counselor. The guidance counselor holds on to them, and as there are needs, then they're distributed accordingly. But we're really happy to have that. And I had one more item on my section, which I forget. What is the next item?
The food service
Oh, yeah.
advisory.
Okay. So on Monday, we have our second Food Advisory Council virtual meeting. The first one I think was really productive. They send in questions ahead of time, and Tina compiles them with answers. We present all those questions and answers in the forum. We take additional questions, and then we write back to all the people to let them know. So it was really very helpful last time. So we hope we'll get good participation. We've already gotten two people submitted questions so far, but it's Monday night at 6, from 6 to 7. All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Superintendent report.
Okay, thank you. Good evening again. And once again, I want to thank Ms. Haley and her team for doing such a phenomenal job on our budget. They've done an excellent job. I also want to state that I also saw the musical 13 a musical, and it was absolutely phenomenal. Every single student on that stage was amazing, and I'll embarrass your daughter a little bit more. She was simply amazing in her role. It was just a wonderful performance. I just want to commend all of the parents, the teachers, and the students for doing an amazing job. At the last meeting, February 28th, there was a concern raised about the funding for the drama club program. I just wanted to announce that I do have a meeting with the director on March 21st. And so I will bring up the new report to the May 1st meeting. So I don't have a report now, but I do have a meeting scheduled with the director so that we can discuss funding for the drama club. And my last announcement for this evening is I am looking forward to tomorrow at 7 o'clock. I will be having a virtual meeting with the president and vice president of all of our elementary student councils. And I'm looking forward to hearing the numerous suggestions and requests that I know are waiting for me that they had from their fellow classmates, but I'm looking forward to hearing about them. So that's tomorrow at 7 o'clock. It's one of my favorite things to do, to meet with the students and hear about what they would like to see in the district. So I'm looking forward to that meeting. And thank you very much, Board President. That ends my report.
Thank you. Moving to committee reports, Ms. Branch Stewart, could you please provide a policy committee update?
Sure. The policy committee met earlier this evening. Dr. Hackett, Mr. Moskowitz, and board members Julie Kedover, Maureen Rudder, Julianne Verdi, and I were present. For first read, we discussed the following revised policies and regulations. Policy 0155, board committees, Regulation 2200, curriculum content, Policy 2340, field trips, Policy and Regulation 2423, bilingual education, Policy and Regulation 2431.4, prevention and treatment of sports-related concussions and head injuries, Regulation 5440, honoring student achievement, Policy 5750, equitable educational opportunity, Policy 5841, secret societies. Policy and Regulation 7610, vandalism, was tabled and will be brought back again for first read. And Policy 9323, notification of juvenile offender case disposition, was also tabled and will be brought back for first read. For second read, we discussed the following: Policy 1140, education equity practices, affirmative action, Policy 1523, comprehensive equity plan, Policy and Regulation 1530, equal employment opportunities and equal employment opportunity complaint procedure, Policy 1550, equal employment anti-discrimination practices, Policy and Regulation 2260, equity in school and classroom practices and equity in school and classroom practices complaint procedure, Policy 2411, guidance counseling, Policy 3211, code of ethics, and Policy 5570, sportsmanship. We also discussed abolishing Policy 5755, equity in educational programs and services, due to redundancy. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Mr. Rosen, can I have an update on the Finance Committee?
Sure. The Finance Committee meeting was held in this building on March 6th at 6 p.m. The committee reviewed the 24-25 budget, including the budget reconciliation between fiscal year 24 and fiscal year 25. We reviewed the components of the New Jersey funding formula. We reviewed how the budget was balanced after the recent 17% cut in New Jersey funding. And we also discussed longer-term budget planning, possible reductions to consider over the next 3 years, and planned purchases and financing options. The committee also discussed investment options to optimize short-term investment income while maintaining liquidity by allocating between the New Jersey ARM program, which is an investment vehicle used by other districts, and certificates of deposit available at TD Bank. The committee also discussed current bids for the fiscal year 24-25 for transportation routes and construction of the preschool classrooms. The next step for the preschool building is the Gibbsboro Planning Board meeting on March 27th, 2024, and the next Finance Committee meeting is scheduled for June 4th.
Thank you so much. Mr. Rosner, can you please provide a Personnel Committee update?
Yes. We held the Personnel Committee meeting yesterday. We discussed the desires and challenges of hiring Spanish teachers for K through 2 generally and in light of the budget constraints. We also discussed the attendance bonus structure, how it came to be for custodians and food service employees. And that is the update. Thanks.
Thank you. Audience participation. Anyone wishing to address the board, please approach the side table on the right and write your name and address on the login sheet. While the board is limited in its ability to respond to the public on matters involving personnel, litigation, negotiation, and attorney-client privilege, the board will now hear comments from the public relating to items on the agenda for this board meeting. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. The board will not take action this evening. You will be notified at some later time by letter, electronic mail, telephone, or in the context of a later board meeting of any action the board does take. Again, I will reiterate, this is audience participation related to agenda items only. Seeing none. Board comments.
I got one. You know, building on what Maureen said about the balancing of the budget and just sort of the curveball that was thrown, I want to commend, you know, Ms. Haley, Danielle, Trisha, anyone else who was involved in this whole process for your competence, diligence, your demeanor as you went through it, and even in the way that you describe these somewhat challenging topics to people that aren't really super involved in it with, like, you know, it's almost excitement, which I don't understand, but it's great. Don't stop doing that. And we really are lucky to have all of you. So really, thank you.
Other board comments?
I wanted to reiterate as well, you know, thank you to Ms. Haley and all of the administrative staff for the hard work on this budget. It is truly a work of art, and I appreciate the really detailed explanation that you provided here tonight. I know I got a lot of clarity, and I very much appreciate, you know, the thorough explanation. I'm also blown away by how quickly and nimbly our administration pivoted when we were made aware of the reduction in state aid. And I was also impressed, just as Maureen mentioned too, not just with the ability to rebalance the budget in light of that cut, but how quickly and professionally the administration communicated to the public about the issue to reassure families about our district's ability to continue to provide high-level education and programming to our town, regardless of this situation. So thank you so much.
Seeing no further comments, moving to policy. Can I get a motion to approve all of the items under policy?
So moved. Second.
Voting is open. The motion unanimously passes.
Can I get a motion to approve the items under curriculum?
So moved.
Second.
Voting is open. The motion unanimously passes.
Can I get a motion to approve all of the items under 16 personnel?
So moved. Second.
Voting is open. The motion unanimously passes.
Can I get a motion to approve all of the items under 17 transportation?
So moved.
Second.
Voting is open. The motion unanimously passes.
There are no items under 18 buildings and grounds. Can I get a motion to approve all of the items under finance, section 19?
So moved.
Okay.
Online voting is open. The motion unanimously passes.
Public comment? Anyone wishing to address the board, please approach the side table on the right and write your name and address on the login sheet. While the board is limited in its ability to respond to the public on matters involving personnel, litigation, negotiations, and attorney-client privilege, the board will now hear comments from the public. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. The board will not take action this evening. You will be notified at some later time by letter, electronic mail, telephone, or in the context of a later board meeting of any action the board does take.
How might they interact with migrants? Be a program that knowing
Thank you.
I just wanted to comment also on the work that goes on behind the scenes. A lot of fun. Great show.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments, board comments?
I'll just make a comment about the show, not about my daughter. I'm blown away by the talent in this community. I'm blown away by the dedication of the teachers and the staff and the engineers and the sound people and the set builders. Parents who do come back and volunteer year after year, some of whom do not get paid, and the kids who are doing the tech and building the sets and learning these invaluable skills. There are so many kids. I actually don't even know how the teachers wrangle them throughout the year. Middle school kids are wild. And they did an amazing job putting on this production that was a departure from prior productions. It was not a Disney show. It was a show about coming of age. And I think for kids, including my daughter, it was really resonant and relevant and touched on so many themes that they deal with every single day in their lives. So I just really want to honor all of the work that went into it. Second thing, I know this is getting to be repetitive, but Ms. Haley, you are a genius and your team are geniuses.
Thank you.
I too want to appreciate not only the work that you did, the quickness with which you responded. There was no, at least I never felt like you couldn't handle this. We all felt calm. We felt that you would figure it out, and you did with your customary grace and professionalism. And it is a testament to this community that we have you and your staff here. So thank you so much.
Thank you on behalf of my staff as well. Thank you. Thank you.
Seeing no other comments, we will not be going to executive session. The next meeting will be May 1st, 2024 for a regular meeting and district reorganization and a public hearing on the 2024-2025 budget. It will be located here at 7 p.m. Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right.